The icy wind of early winter in Sydney cut straight to my bones. I had just left a 3-hour Asian art auction in the rocks, where the ancient cobblestone streets lay silent under the imposing shadow of the harbour bridge. For the past 3 years, my work as an antiques appraiser had been the only lifeline keeping me from sinking into the quicksand of the past. I stopped in front of a high-end children's fashion boutique, intending to buy a small gift for my niece back home. But suddenly my feet were glued to the pavement, as if bolted to the asphalt, and my breath hitched in my chest. On the other side of the clear glass, under the dazzling light of a crystal chandelier, a man was kneeling on the polished parquet floor. With care and precision, he was putting tiny leather shoes on a beautiful boy of about 3. Beside him, a young woman with voluminous curly hair smiled with satisfaction, holding an expensive Birkin bag. The scene was so beautiful, complete, and happy that it provoked envy. But in a cruel twist of fate, every feature of the man's face, the way he frowned slightly as he tied the laces, the small mole behind his left earlobe, was familiar to me, branded into my memory. It was my husband, the man I had presumed dead in a tragic plane crash 3 years ago, the man for whose soul I had spent a fortune on memorial services, the man whose commemorative photo still solemnly presided over my cold house. I felt my blood freeze in my veins, then boil with fury, but I didn't rush at them or scream. My instinct, as one of the country's top appraisers, whispered, "Keep a cool head. Observe carefully." Before issuing a verdict on the piece in front of me, I stepped back into the shadow of a street lamp. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone. Through the camera lens, zoomed into the max, I clearly saw every gesture of affection he gave the child. The boy had his eyes, his nose. It was unmistakable. As for the woman, I recognized her. It was his former executive assistant, the one Elias had sworn to me about time and again. "Don't be suspicious, baby. She's just an employee. She has a tough family situation, and I'm mentoring her." It turned out the mentoring was so complete, it included having a son together. The cashmere coat he wore, the Patek Philippe watch on his wrist, and the handbag worth thousands in his lover's hand. With a stabbing pain, I realized all those luxuries had been bought with my money. With the money from the sale of the inheritance my mother had left me, with the money from the sale of the rare antiques my father had collected with such care, all to pay off the $2 million debt he had supposedly left behind after his death. I bit my lips, so hard it bled, stifling the sob fighting to escape my throat. For 3 years I had lived like a ghost, caring for his parents as if they were my own, breaking my back to pay a dead man's debts. And he meanwhile was living like a king in this paradise with a beautiful woman and a healthy son, building his new home with my sweat and tears. The truth, naked and cruel, was like a sharp knife plunging into my heart, tearing apart the naive trust one once had. Elias seemed to feel a gaze on him. He lifted his head, his eyes sweeping the window toward where I stood. I jumped, pulled my hood up quickly, and turned around, losing myself in the rushing crowd. I couldn't let him discover me now. I wasn't ready. A scene on foreign soil would only make me a laughingstock and alert them to hide their assets. I needed a plan, something perfect, ruthless, a plan worthy of the damage they had caused me. I hailed a taxi and said with a broken voice, "Kingsford Smith International Airport, please." Sitting in the car, I clutched the phone, still warm in my hand. That brief video now weighed 1,000 tons. I watched the city of Sydney fade away through the window, blurred by the rain, or perhaps my tears. I didn't know anymore. I only knew that the weak, love-struck woman named Amara had died on that street. The woman returning to the States now would be entirely different. The plane tore through the night. I curled up in my first-class seat, the silence fueling painful memories. I remembered that fateful day 3 years ago, the day the news reported the plane crash in international waters. Elias's name was on the list of missing passengers. I fainted and woke in a hospital surrounded by my mother-in-law's wailing. They found no intact bodies. The authorities identified Elias through dental records and DNA from a tiny tissue sample. Grief had clouded my judgment. I never questioned the inconsistencies in that forensic report. After that funeral without a body, my hell began. Creditors arrived like vultures. They showed promissory notes with Elias's signature totaling $2 million. They said he'd borrowed to invest in high-risk ventures and lost it all. My in-laws, Arthur and Diana, collapsed. Arthur suffered a stroke, and Diana fell into a deep depression, leaving the entire burden on me. Diana grabbed my hand, her face bathed in tears. Amara, my dear, what a tragedy. Elias is gone and has left us this mountain of debt. Your father-in-law and I are old. We can only count on you. Don't abandon us. Out of loyalty, out of love for my husband, I nodded. I sold all my mother's jewelry. I sold the luxury brownstone my father had gifted me. And most painful of all, I sold the priceless antiques my father had collected and cared for all his life. All to buy peace for my husband's family. $2 million. The figure danced in my head, mocking my stupidity. Now, connecting the dots with the image of Elias's happy family in Australia, everything fit. That money was never lost. It was covertly transferred offshore, turning into a villa, luxury cars, the opulent life he and his lover were enjoying. Me, Amara, an expert appraiser capable of distinguishing the authentic from the fake in ancient artifacts, hadn't been able to see the dark soul of the man sharing my bed. But that wasn't all. A freezing thought ran down my spine. I remembered the pungent herbal tea Diana forced me to drink every night for the last 3 years. She said it was an old family recipe for vitality. You've worked too hard for this family, darling. Drink this to recover. And I drank it with gratitude. But since I started, my cycle became scant and irregular. My body was always languid. I thought it was stress. Now, a terrifying hypothesis formed. What if that tea wasn't to nourish me, but to sterilize me? They wanted a money-making machine, but feared I might remarry and take the assets. So in secret, they destroyed my health. This cruelty went beyond all human limits. Misplaced kindness is like a poison. It kills you slowly. But luckily, I was still alive, and I had woken up. The plane began its descent into Dulles International Airport. I was back, but not to remain the devoted daughter-in-law or the grieving widow. The taxi stopped in front of a stately manor in Potomac, Maryland. Pushing open the door, the first thing I saw was Diana, lying on the expensive leather sofa with a facial mask, yelling at the housekeeper. Seeing me, she barely sat up. You're back. Why so late? I told you there are few people in this house. Your father-in-law is sick. You have to learn to come back early. I left my suitcase on the floor and sketched a weak smile. Yes, the flight was delayed. How is Dad? Diana huffed. Same as always. A fortune in medicines. By the way, did you get paid from the Australia project? Next month, we have hundreds of expenses. Looking at her, I felt a chill. This was the mother-in-law I once considered my own mother. The one who had hugged me crying inconsolably. It was all an act. In her eyes, I wasn't family, but a money-printing machine. I'm a little tired, I said, lowering my head. With your permission, I'm going to my room to rest. Tomorrow I'll do the accounts. Diana waved her hand as if shooing a fly. Yes, go. And remember to get up early to make breakfast. In silence, I carried my suitcase upstairs. The bedroom door closed. I locked it and slid down to the cold floor. This room, once our love nest, was now the tomb of my youth. I got up, went to the vanity, and picked up a photo from our anniversary trip. In it, he looked at me with devotion, swearing eternal love. I smiled bitterly and slowly placed the photo face down on the table. It was over. I pulled an old burner phone from my suitcase and inserted a prepaid SIM. My trembling hands dialed the number of Mr. Thorne, my father's best friend and our family lawyer. The phone rang before a kind, sleepy voice answered. Hello. I took a deep breath. Thorne, it's Amara. I'm sorry to call at this hour, but I need you to do something for me immediately. He sensed the gravity. Amara, what's wrong? Calm down. Tell me everything. I looked at the darkness wrapping the room. Every word was like a bullet fired in the silent night. Activate the heritage protection protocol immediately. Completely separate my parents' assets from the marital estate with Elias's family. And I need you to secretly investigate the entire file of the plane crash from 3 years ago. I suspect Elias is still alive. There was a long silence. Then Thorne's voice sounded full of astonishment, but also trust. Understood. Don't worry, Amara. I'm on it right now. The next morning, I left at dawn. My destination was a small coffee shop in Georgetown where Thorne waited. He pushed a cup of hot ginger tea toward me. Drink a little to warm up. If your father saw you like this, it would break his heart. I put the flash drive with the Sydney video on the table. Thorne watched it carefully. When it ended, his face hardened. The scoundrel! I can't believe he dared to do something so monstrous. I clasped my hands, my voice strangely calm. I want you to help me recover everything that belongs to me and my family. I don't want a single cent to fall into the hands of those grifters. Help me process the divorce and report their fraud. Thorne nodded with determination, opening his briefcase. I asked some old friends to review the accident case. There were suspicious points we overlooked. He showed me a dental record. The date has been altered. This record was redone at a private clinic just 6 months before the accident by an old college buddy of Elias's. He turned to the DNA analysis. The tissue sample matches your in-laws by 99%. I suspect it wasn't Elias's, but a close relative's. I'm investigating. Every word was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. I remember the months before the accident. Elias traveled frequently, spoke on the phone in secret. He wasn't busy with work. He was busy preparing his own death. Thorne, I want a legal firewall, I said, my voice firm. Prepare the documents to confirm my separate assets. At the same time, secretly gather evidence of his family's money laundering activities. Thorne put a hand on my shoulder. Don't worry. I'll do it immediately. You've become stronger than your father could have imagined. Keep playing your role. Leave the legal part in my hands. We will dismantle his conspiracy. Leaving the cafe, the drizzle hadn't stopped, but my heart no longer felt cold. I knew I wasn't alone. Behind me stood Thorne, my father's legacy, and the justice waiting to be served. I pulled up my collar and blended into the crowd. The performance was just beginning.